the spring of 2020, something unusual happened. The world went quiet, streets emptied, cafes and classrooms shut their doors, humans retreated indoors. For most of us, it was a moment of isolation, uncertainty, and fear. But for one tiny, unassuming bird, it was an experiment unlike any ecologist could have imagined. The dark-eyed junco, a small, sparrow-like songbird that adapted to city life, experienced a rapid and unexpected transformation. Its beak, which had evolved over decades to thrive alongside humans, began to revert back to its original form. And it raises a remarkable question. How deeply does human life affect the natural world, even in ways that we can see through the bodies of animals? Today, we're exploring the story of these urban songbirds, the pandemic lockdown, and how a tiny beak tells a story of evolution, adaptation, and the unseen consequences of our presence. About 20 years ago, the dark-eyed junco, normally a forest-dwelling bird, began to colonize urban Los Angeles. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Researchers discovered that these birds were no longer dependent on forests, but they learned to exploit human-dominated environments. Campus lawns, student cafeterias, and sidewalks littered with crumbs. Slowly, these birds began to diverge from their forest relatives. Their wings became shorter and their beaks became stubbier. These are physical changes. An evolutionary biologist explains that city juncos aren't just surviving, they're adapting. Their beaks, for example, are adapted for human foods. Cookies, pizza, bread, these are not what a wild junco would eat, but urban juncos have adapted to thrive on them. Then, in early 2020, everything changed. COVID-19 brought cities to a halt. Universities and cafeterias closed. Areas that have been occupied by humans for decades emptied. For the urban juncos, this was a shock. The food source that they'd relied on for years suddenly disappeared, and nature, left largely undisturbed, began to respond. Scientists saw how these birds would behave if human activity was largely reduced. Would they struggle without crumbs and cafeteria scraps? Would their behavior revert to a more natural state? Could evolution respond in real time? This became a rare natural experiment that's almost impossible to replicate. An evolutionary biologist at UCLA said, "We were really shocked. The juncos born during the lockdowns had beaks that looked more like their wild ancestors. This was a visible, clear response to the absence of humans." Juncos born in the spring of 2020, shortly after lockdowns began, had stubbier beaks, more like the urban birds. However, chicks born in 2021 and 2022 had longer, slimmer birds, more like their wildland form. It seemed as if evolution had reversed itself. And then, as humans reappeared in 2023 and 2024, the stubby beak shape reappeared. This is a case of adaptive evolution. When cabbage food disappeared, birds with slimmer beaks were more likely to eat insects and seeds. This meant that they lived longer and were more likely to reproduce. In a single generation, the whole population shifted physically. This shows that evolution isn't always slow. If survival is at stake, it can happen at a much faster rate. For urban wildlife, for ecosystem engineers, often without realizing it, our food habits shape birds' diets. Our movement patterns shape animals' behaviors, and our presence drives physical changes over decades. The evolutionary biologist from earlier explains, "We often think of humans as separate from nature, but the juncos show us the opposite. Our actions are deeply embedded in ecosystems, and when we step away, nature responds, sometimes very quickly." Here are some other effects of the lockdowns. Some mountain lions ventured closer to cities, sea turtles approached shores that they previously avoided, and birds started chirping at a lower volume than before in quieter areas. Yet the junco study is unique. It's the first documented physical change that's caused directly by human absence. This isn't just adaptation, it's evolution caused directly by human actions. Scientists are still piecing together the puzzle. Why exactly did their beaks change so fast? Was it just diet? And did interbreeding with wild juncos play a role in this? In evolutionary terms, this is natural selection that's happening very fast. Another hypothesis is that when humans disappeared, the wild juncos were more likely to come to urban spaces, which caused interbreeding, but the evidence for this is limited. What's clear is that human activity causes physical changes in wildlife, but this raises a question. How many species are dependent on us and have changed because of us, and what happens when we step back? A beak is a simple object, a small, fragile extension made of bone, but it tells a story of survival, adaptation, and human influence. Short, stubby beaks are perfectly suited to tear soft foods, whereas longer and more slender beaks are better for seeds and insects. One tiny feature reflects decades of interaction with humans. The pandemic temporarily rewrote that history, and then humans returned and evolution pivoted back. And in just a few years, humans saw evolution differently. Firstly, humans shape urban wildlife. Every piece of trash, every pizza crust that's thrown out, they create selection pressures. Secondly, animals adapt quickly. Urban wildlife is not passive. It learns, survives, and evolves in response to human behavior. Third, nature responds when we step back. The pandemic revealed the resilience of ecosystems in a unique, global-scale experiment. Fourth, we have a larger role than we believe. From city squirrels to pigeons to juncos, we're not just coexisting, we're shaping life itself. When we change our behavior, animals would notice. When we step back, they reclaim spaces. And when we create scarcity, only those adapted will survive. Evolution isn't distant or abstract. It's happening right outside our doors right now. As humans continue to urbanize the planet, the junco story offers some lessons. Firstly, urban planning must take into account wildlife, and food waste management isn't just aesthetic, it's evolutionary. And understanding adaptation can help protect species in rapidly changing environments. The COVID-19 lockdowns were unprecedented for humans, but for the dark-eyed juncos, they were evolutionary experiments played out in real time. In a world defined by constant human activity, it's easy to forget that our presence has consequences. Not just for the climate, not just for ecosystems, but for the very bodies of animals surrounding us. And it might be happening just beyond your notice. On a bird's wing small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. On a bird's beak that's shaped by your own decisions. And a bird's song that changed because the world went quiet. Thank you for watching.